Hey guys, this is Justin at The Survivor Review, and today we're talking about something that I don't normally talk about on this channel, like a type of film that I wouldn't normally cover here, but I really want to talk about this one just because it was so great. Today we're talking about the new World War I documentary from Peter Jackson, They Shall Not Grow Old. Now, I really want to talk about this one because after seeing it, I really wish I saw it last year, because this would have easily have made my top 10 best of the year list for 2018. Easily would have been on there, so I really wish I had seen it then so I could have put it on that list, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it now. And this documentary is incredible. This is probably one of the most unique documentaries I've ever seen. Now, for those who don't know what it is, essentially Peter Jackson was tasked with making a documentary about World War I 100 years after it ended, and of course it's Peter Jackson, so he's not just going to go a typical route and just be like, oh yeah, let's get some footage and then we'll have some people talk about the events. No, he had access to like the British archive of over 100 hours of footage, plus over 600 hours of audio interviews with actual World War I veterans. And so he was tasked with putting all this together into a movie, and what he did was just incredible. Because the documentary starts off in typical fashion, in black and white, you know, and the little small screen doesn't take up the whole frame. And what Peter Jackson did was restore this footage, colorize it, add sound to it, and converted it into 3D. Which, you know, first sounds like kind of a gimmick, you know, to like colorize it, put it in 3D. You're like, oh, okay, it's just kind of like a gimmicky thing. But it works perfectly. And this, like, once the documentary, because the first, like, 20 or so minutes are in black and white and everything, like, no sound, just the veterans talking over it. But once, like, after that 20-minute mark and the screen zooms in, holy crap. Like, this is some incredible stuff. What I love about this documentary is that it's all from the soldiers' perspectives. Because there is no narration, there is no narrator. The only people talking in the documentary are the veterans talking over it. And it gives a very intimate look into war and the just horrors of war. But not only that, even like the camaraderie of war. Like, this documentary is only like an hour and 40 minutes, and it covers a lot of ground and does it very well. Like, it's a lot of information conveyed in here, from the start of the documentary, which is about how the soldiers, how they enlisted into the army, some really crazy stuff about how they would lie about their age to get in. Some were like 15, 16, and half the time, like, the people allowed them to, like the people at the registration office, like the guy would be like, oh, I'm only like 15. You're like, oh, well, come back in and tell me you're 18. And you're like, holy crap, like that's some interesting stuff in there. Like, there's that, and then you see them like on the front lines, and just like intimate stuff that you wouldn't normally get in these type of documentaries. Normally I feel like if you're doing a war documentary, you're going to cover either like the political aspects or like the broad aspects of how like they fought in combat and stuff like that. But this covers like little stuff, you know, like how they made food, like how they boiled water, how they went to the bathroom even, and that stuff was just very fascinating and really just gave like a real life like perspective to this stuff. Like, it really made you like care about these people, even though it's just documentary footage of random soldiers. I mean, you really got a good feeling of what it was like to be there. Like I said, very just like intimate and really like just there on the front lines. You really get to see and almost like experience what the soldiers went through and how the conditions they had to deal with, how bad it was, and just like, it just really puts a lot of stuff into perspective. It was so beautifully handled, and like I said, like when it goes to color and goes to like 3D and all that kind of stuff, it works, and it's so immersive. It's almost like a strange feeling watching it, because I can't exactly describe it, but you're watching this footage, and the way Peter Jackson does it is like he adds some like camera movements sometimes, which makes some of the footage feel a little more cinematic, and so sometimes it almost feels like you're watching like just a movie, but then you realize, no, this is like real footage. Like, you have to sit back and be like, okay, this is actually real footage. These are real people. This is real stuff that happened, and it's crazy. It also helps, it makes like stuff more haunting when you get to like some really dark stuff, because there's some intense stuff in this documentary, which is something crazy to say for a documentary, that it gets really intense at times, because there's combat scenes. Well, there's one major combat scene in the documentary, and the way it's handled, because there was no actual footage of them in combat, you know, of course, and the way he kind of handles it is that he uses these pictures from these war magazines, which I know some people might not like that because like you're trying to watch a documentary, you're watching this footage that really is immersive and makes it feel like you're there, and then it cuts to like pictures to kind of tell part of the story. Some people might not like that. I didn't mind it too much. I thought it was alright, but there's something else they do. I don't want to exactly say what it is, but you know, mixed together with the sound, with the constant gunfire and explosions going off, which sitting in the theater and hearing that was just like crazy. But there's the thing they do with the footage, I don't want to exactly say what it is, but the way they kind of juxtapose footage from pre-battle to post-battle, that's all I really say, is haunting. And just like, holy crap, that got to me. I was sitting there just like, Jesus Christ. Like, it really shows the horror of war. And it does get a little disturbing at times. Not like crazy disturbing, because there is some graphic footage in here. Nothing too like insanely graphic, but there is stuff just showing like, you know, the aftermath of the battles, and you do see some real dead bodies in there, which made it feel kind of weird sitting in a theater like with 3D glasses. Like, I'm watching a 3D movie where there's real footage of dead bodies. That's a little strange. But, you know, that stuff's a little graphic, not too insanely bad, but like showing that stuff, like, it just really shows the horrors of war and what these soldiers went through. And like I said, what I love about it is that it's all from their perspective. Like, there's no outside narrator, you know, telling you the grand scheme of things, the grand story of what happened in the war. It's just from the soldiers' perspectives and what they went through on the front lines, and how, not only like how they got into the war, but also at the end too. Like, when it's over, you see they go through a little bit, not too much, but they go through a little bit of post-war, of like how they felt coming home and stuff like that. Like I said, this documentary covers a lot in an hour and 40 minutes, but it all is handled very well, and it doesn't feel like too much information at once. Like, the pacing I thought was really good. There's a couple moments where it kind of would circle back to some things we've seen before. Like, I noticed it spent like a lot of time showing their downtime, and then like it showed like some crazy like wartime like actiony stuff of combat, and then went back to showing their downtime, and you're like, okay, we just saw some of that, but you know. But for the most part, the pacing was really good. Like, I couldn't do this like task. Like, this is such a huge undertaking of taking 100 hours of footage, 600 hours of audio, and condensing it to an hour and 40 minutes. But Peter Jackson really does a good job with it. If you do catch this in theaters, because this came out last week, a wide release. I know I had a couple like little showings here and there beforehand, but it's just got a wide release last weekend. And if you're able to check it out in theaters, which I highly recommend checking this out in theaters, like, it's definitely worth it. It's actually a great cinematic experience. Even though it's like a documentary showing old World War I footage, it is a truly cinematic experience. So I highly recommend seeing this in a theater. And if you do see in theater, there is a 30-minute like behind the scenes documentary after the credits, where Peter Jackson goes through like the process of restoring the footage and getting the people to come in and like the like professional lip readers to read the lips of like the people on the footage, and then finding actors to come in and dub that audio and add an audio to it and all that kind of stuff. That was truly fascinating, like just as fascinating as the actual movie itself. I really hope there's going to be like an extensive documentary like on the making of this documentary. Kind of weird to say that, on the Blu-ray down the line. I would love to see like a long thing about this. I know Peter Jackson loves his long ass documentaries. I still have the giant production diary box set from the King Kong movie he did. I really want to see more of that. Again, the future Blu-ray release, I really hope they go all out with that. But anyway, there's a lot of fascinating stuff in there about how they put all this stuff together. But Peter Jackson talks about like all the stuff he worked with and all the footage he got to work with, and mentions how there's so much more stuff that he didn't use in here. Like, this documentary just covers the British soldiers and kind of like their experience, them on the front lines and all the stuff that they went through. But he's like, there's much more footage of like the airmen, of the Navy, of women like back home, like in the workforce and stuff like that, that I would love to see more of this. Like, I understand this is a lot of work to do. Like, he's been working on this since like 2015. So I understand that there's a lot to work on this, but I would love if this was like a series. Like, if they made more of these, or even made it as like a TV series, like covering those other bits of the works. I would be so fascinated by that. Like, World War I is a war that's not covered too much, and honestly something I'm not too familiar with, to be perfectly honest. I'm not too familiar with World War I, so this stuff is just fascinating to me, and I would love to see more of this. Like I said, I know it's a huge undertaking and a lot of work to like restore all the footage, colorize it, like go through hours upon hours of audio and footage to do it, but I would love to see more of this. Like what stuff he showed in there was truly fascinating. And yeah, like definitely like stay, if you see this in theaters, stay till the end to watch that documentary, because it's truly fascinating, like to see the making of process behind this, and just how deeply invested in this war like Peter Jackson was. Like he's such a diehard like historian for World War One that he literally owns like World War One era cannons. Of course. I did see this in 3D, and I heard like great things about the 3D. That's why I wanted to see it in that format. I don't normally want to see things in 3D, but to be honest, I wasn't too impressed with the 3D. There were moments in it that were pretty cool, that worked really well, but I don't know, it didn't quite work perfectly to me, and I didn't think it was like an amazing 3D experience, unfortunately. Like I really wanted it to be, but there were some really cool like immersion stuff, like especially the first shot when it goes from like black and white, kind of zooms into color. It's just like, holy crap, like you're there with them. So I would say check it out like in 3D if you can, but if you can't make it to a 3D showing, 2D will do just fine. You're not gonna lose a whole lot. The documentary plays perfectly fine in 2D, you know? But like I said, this was just an incredible documentary, one of the most unique documentaries I've ever seen, and just like truly investing. I loved it, and there's so much fascinating information in this. From like I said, from like the soldiers' experiences and all that kind of stuff, to the heart-wrenching, like intense like combat scenes, to even some really fascinating stuff. I love how, even though this documentary is produced by the British like Association and all that kind of stuff, like from Britain and stuff, like it doesn't play Germans. It doesn't play the Germans off as bad guys. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there where you see like the British interacting with the Germans and how like they were kind of friendly to each other sometimes. Like they knew, they treated the Germans as people, you know, and not just the enemy. And I thought that was a really interesting take to put in there, not just be like, oh yeah, we had to fight off the evil Germans, but to really show like that these people were human, you know. And I thought that that's one of the best things about this. You really see the human elements to the war. I feel like that's what makes this so great. You see like how they reacted to everything, how they reacted to just these crazy like moments. There's a lot of dark stuff that the veterans like talk about doing and experiencing. And then you see like the light moments where they're just hanging about and goofing around, and like I said, even the light moments afterwards with like the captured Germans, and how some of them would just sit down and have a conversation with them like it's just a normal person. I thought that's what makes this documentary so great. And the way Peter Jackson put it all together, and like I said, the colorization, the audio added to it, seems like a gimmick, but it's not. It works so perfectly for this and makes this such an immersive experience that was just incredible. Like, I love this documentary. Like, I highly recommend you go to see it. It's great. So yeah, that's They Shall Not Grow Old. Just awesome, incredible experience. Like I said, highly recommend it. So yeah, that's about it for now. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.